And welcome back to the channel, and welcome back to this continuation of the previous episode of the Black Bag Comics. So in the previous episode we were looking at the whole Deathmate crossover between with Valiant and Image Comics. So in the previous episode we saw the blue issue, and now we're looking at issue yellow, again produced by Valiant Comics. Okay, so this came out in September, even though it says October on the cover, but this was September of '93. The blue issue came out. I have it right here. Give me just one second. Did I say October? Yeah, October of. So this came out first, then the blue issue. But the idea, as I mentioned in the previous episode in part one, the idea was that it didn't really matter what order they came out. The idea is that you could read them out of order, and the story would still be, coherent, because of I don't know if foreshadowing and whatnot, but Image was known for being late with their comics, so it was either intentionally planned that way, or that's just how luckily it came out that way. But anyway, so here we have Archer and Armstrong and Wildcats with Mike Barron, the writer, and Bernard Chang, penciler. So now in Rodney Ramos, inker. So in the previous part one, in the part one of the episode, I mentioned that I had Sean Chen as the guy that was doing that went on to work with CrossGen and then Marvel. I'm pretty sure I had that wrong. I think it was Bernard Chang that did all of that, because now that I'm looking at this is what I'm trying to. This is what I remember from Bernard Chang and the artwork that I was thinking of. So I'm pretty sure I had that wrong. Bernard Chang, to me, was probably one of the better artists that Valiant had, and he would probably only get better when he went on to CrossGen and then into Marvel. You could in part one I mentioned that Valiant had a house style, you could say, right? I mean, almost every publisher has their own sort of art style that they want to present, right? But that was almost mostly just by I want to say mandate by the publishers back then. They wanted to keep like a seamless look across their whole books. That was like the mentality, I want to say, in like the 50s and the 60s and 70s. Up until the 70s, you started to see the up and coming young artists of back then, guys like Neil Adams and John Byrne and George Perez. Those were like the big guys from that era. And then things started to shift a little bit. So but there was always like a house style, right? It wasn't until it was in the 90s when the Image guys exploded onto the scene with at Marvel, with McFarlane on Spider-Man, previously with Hulk, and Jim Lee in the X-Men, Rob Liefeld in X-Force, and New Mutants, and Quesada, and Silvestri with Wolverine and the X-Men, and all of those guys, Will Portacio, Eric Larson. So a lot of shifting back then, and then later the influence from Joe Madureira that he brought with the influence of manga and all of that. So by the 90s, it started to become more of a mixed soup of art styles and comics. There was no real house style anymore. And then we went on to like the realistic art styles. More familiar with like guys from Brian Hitch and Good or Bad, Greg Land and all of that. But Valiant still was like one of those old school type publishers that wanted to keep an overall house style, I want to say. Again, I don't know if it was mandated or it was just they were looking for artists that had similar styles. But you can see here that Bernard Chang, it's a little more different than what we had previously seen. He does bring a little more of that visual excitement to his art. It's not as constrained, I want to say, or again, I keep calling it basic, but it's not basic that in a bad sense. Basic. When I say basic, is that it's constrained to the the grid, the panel gridding, and all of that. But even then, he tries to go with a more exaggerated style of the camera angles and all of that, right? Which would later be developed even further when he went into CrossGen and then Marvel. But yeah, I mean, overall, there's nothing really, nothing really bad about his art. Everything is excellent. He moves the camera a lot, right? He's not afraid to do like challenging shots, and they all come out pretty well. You don't see proportions get wonky. Sometimes trying to pull off a shot like this, right? You may lose something when proportion-wise, everything is consistent all around. Probably suffers a little from what they call, the same face, but that's stylistic. That's a choice by the artist. Every artist has like a familiar, proportion styles they want to keep consistent throughout, right? So it almost looks like Sean was trying to be a little more exciting visually, like not going full image style, but like dressing up the Valiant house style with a little image flair, right? This is Barry Windsor Smith. And then here we have, let's see, Jorge Gonzalez writer, Don Perlin penciler, Mike Manley inker. Mike Manley was an accomplished artist in his own right. Pretty sure I have a few issues that he drew of Batman somewhere in there. Maybe they'll make an appearance. Now here we can see a little more. Again, I don't want to sound rude or anything, because I mean, who am I, right? But you can see almost off the bat, you know, you compare this, right, to this, and you're looking at different levels of an artist, right? You know, there's like, you know, immediately when someone has it, right, as an artist, and then when someone is just still working their way up and finding their voice artistically. So by this time, you know, Bernard Chang was very accomplished, and then this guy Perlin, I mean, again, it's one of those guys that I've never heard from, you know, except for doing this. Maybe he's still in comics, I don't know, but or he stayed in comics not too long after this, I don't know, again. But it's pretty, you know, he's following that established house style that Valiant had. You know, this reminds me, looking at this, and this has like that, you know, when I look at this, it's like I'm looking at the Jim Aparo Batman, you know, Bruce Wayne style. It's that kind of a face. And it's all, you know, decent artwork. It's not bad, right? But you can tell it's someone that's still trying to grow as an artist. Like, some of the action is just, you know, all right, but like it could use something more. This looks a little, you know, weird to me. The Zealot's, you know, breasts are, in my opinion, hanging too low here. If the angle is meant to indicate that she, you know, we're looking up at her, right? Then we her breasts should be higher up, near. I mean, just extend your arm, right? And then extend your arm upwards like her. There's a muscle. Where's my pointer? I'm missing my pointer. There you go. So the that was from the demo the other day of the spider webbing. So you have the muscle that leads from the pectoral up into the shoulder and underneath the bicep, right? But when you lift your arm, the pec goes up with the shoulder, as it were, you know. So and we're supposed to be looking up at her, so we're gonna go like this, right? Something like, from this we go to something like this. So the cylinder of her torso, you know, if you're thinking of basic shapes, right? You think of her, if you want to think of her torso as a cylinder like this, right? So obviously you have it straight up like this, and when you're looking up at it, it extends something like this, right? So this, her breast should be further up, because look at where her shoulders are. This is her shoulder, supposedly. This is where supposedly her shoulders are, and look at where her breasts are. So once she puts down her hands, right, her breasts are gonna be hanging down by her elbows, right? When typically they should be hanging by, you know, somewhere around her bicep. So this needed to be, her midsection is too short by contrast. So this should have gone higher up, a longer midsection, and the breast should have been somewhere around this area right here. And then when she raises her arm, the breast, the pecs, the pectoral muscle would then be lifted upwards, leading into the shoulder. Under the curve underneath her breast would be somewhere around here, leading up, down, up and under the armpit, right, and into the shoulder. So, again, probably just the limitations of the artist at the time, right? And then this pose here is just, it's not that good. Her butt cheek, I mean, look, it's just one single curve, right? When obviously we know that's not true, right? So even though there's a line here implying where the two butt cheeks, separate, but as a drawing, you don't want to give her just one butt, one large butt, right? And the pose itself is a little weird. Again, this part here of her torso, I would probably put the breasts up, the curve down below. I probably would have put it up higher. And her midsection is just too small. That's the problem. He's putting the rib cage down too low. Argument could be made that she's kind of hunching over as she's putting her blades up, but it still looks wonky. Because here you can see here how he gives her the longer torso, and the breast actually hang where I mentioned earlier should be. If she were to lower her arm down, it would be somewhere around the middle part of her biceps. And then here we have David, I don't even remember how to say it, Michelini, Bob Layden coplot, Mike Leake penciler, Tom Ryder ink. So from what I've seen, Mike Leake has been the guy doing the covers for both issues, the blue and this one. So I'm assuming he was one of the better artists that they had. I mean, they had Barry Windsor Smith, but Barry Windsor Smith, as far as I remember, did not participate. I think Bob Layton drew the prologue. So with inked by Jim Lee, and then but yeah, Barry Windsor Smith would have been someone that would have killed it on this series if he would have drawn something. So here we have the Wildcats and the Hard Corpse, which is, if I remember correctly, they were called the Wild Corpse in the crossover. And again, it's the typical house style that that Valiant had, which is why a lot of it didn't really appeal to me, because as much as different that this looks from the typical house style, it was just one guy, Bernard Chang, doing this. Everybody else had pretty much kind of the similar style to them, So that's why they partially didn't. That's why Valiant didn't really appeal to me. And this is a pretty cool sequence. So this guy, I believe he has. Oh, I'm thinking of somebody else. I don't know. I was thinking that he. I was thinking of something else because I remember there was someone that had the power like once you touch them, they would freeze, and it was in an Image comic. Now that I remember. And then the guy just got blown up to bits, but the guy was stayed in his pose as he got blasted through. I guess this guy is just frying him alive. But this guy, he gets crushed from behind. It's like, well, he's dead, right? So if he's gonna go, he's gonna take someone with him, and he blows a hole through himself to kill the guy, right? And then here we have somebody here that paid the ultimate price. I don't know, yada yada. But you can see that of all the artists that Valiant had, you can tell that this guy was like on another level, you could say, of better. So here they rip Spartan in half. This sequence is also pretty. This is what I meant when I said that no, Valiant wasn't too shy of going there as far as the gore. Again, I don't know if it's the Image influence because they're doing a crossover with them, but you know, a guy that phases in and then phases through the guy and then explodes him from within, that's pretty gruesome. Alright, here you go. Here you see the guy coming out. This is a pretty drawing of a pretty girl. And then they blast this guy. He's dead. Zayla has half her leg chewed out. And then eventually she dies. I guess they all of them took her out as a sacrifice. You know, she sacrificed herself to leave, get the other guy to leave. And then the guy makes it, and he kills whoever this guy was. But again, you know, I'm going through this pretty fast because again, everything is, I mean, there's nothing to me that is visually striking, like, oh my god, look at this panel, look at this or that or the other. Again, it's just all solid storytelling, right? Nothing too crazy. And then you know, it's just it's a Valiant comic, you know. So here we have Bob Hall with Mark Moretti, penciler, John Dixon, inker. About the only thing that wows me of you know, this whole thing is the coloring. You know, it's if it's all done by hand, I mean, you know, that's how comics used to be done. But it looks to me like it's done with like watercolors, right? So that's what's catching my eye. Let's see. You know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You're gonna see a lot. You know, one of the things that you see in these issues is a lot of panels. You know, no, this one doesn't have as many, but you know, they don't take shortcuts with their storytelling like the Image style, you know, that has like 4 at the most, you know, 4 panels, 4 or 5 panels, when back then, you know, you were used to seeing, you know, back then meaning like in the 80s and all of that, you know, 7, 8, 9 panels, you know, consistently. This looks different. Finally, a little something different. This almost looks a little like from what we saw with the Action Comics that we reviewed earlier, uh, from Jackson Guys. You know, this looks a little more, trying to be a little more on the realistic style. You know, it's not trying to be so cartoony, right? In the sense of, if we compare this to this, right? This looks cartoony. This looks more realistic to me. But some solid storytelling going on here. Which again, it's something that you know, that's the thing that I've seen while, you know, looking at both issues, the blue and yellow here. You know, they all move you through the page nicely. There's nothing that, if you're looking at it, just by looking at it, there's nothing that gives you like a pause as to what's happening, you know. Of course, you know, it helps if you're familiar with who the characters are and all of that. Like for instance, the Star Wars droids issue that we looked at before. You know, not knowing anything other than C-3PO and R2. That story. Yeah, if you looked at it, you know, just by flipping it at it, you wouldn't know what the hell was going on. So yeah, again, you know, the yeah, we're at the end. So this leads up to the blue issue. So yeah, you know, the whole Deathmate thing. Let me bring in blue here. The whole Deathmate thing, you know, was supposed to be like this big, huge crossover, but it ended up just being a major dud. Again, the story was just not really that great. Like I mentioned, basically, you know, it was just two characters. It was Solar and, well, she's not in the cover, but, you know, Boyd. They hooked up, and that was just about it. And that caused a rift in their universes, and now I'm not exactly sure what the entire point of the crossover was. Other than just, let's get these two companies together and let's make some comics and sell a bunch of them, but which eventually they kind of did, but not really. So yeah, it was the you know, historically it'll probably go down as the biggest flop in comics in terms of like crossovers from major publishers, right? Because you may argue that the whole in the 90s, you know, Marvel DC did their crossovers, and which led to like the amalgam. There we go. The amalgam comics thing, and then later on, you know, we had Avengers versus Avengers Justice League. That was better. But you know, in terms of like at the height of where comics were, and the hype for this was the one of the biggest letdowns probably ever. So yeah, there we have Deathmate yellow and blue. Thank you for watching, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next one.